The following is a conversation with Charlotte Brynn. Charlotte was nominated as World Female Open Water Swimmer of the Year in 2013 and named one of the world's top 50 aquatic adventurists in 2014, 15, 17, and 19 by the World Open Water Association. In 2018, Charlotte was named one of the top women open water coaches and mentors in the world and was inducted into the Vermont Open Water Swimming Hall of Fame in 2016. She has achieved international recognition by completing some of the world's most challenging marathon swims, including the 28-mile Manhattan Island Swim, the 20-mile Catalina Channel, and the 22-mile Atlantic City Around the Island Swim. She is a two-time overall female winner of the 25-kilometer Border Buster Swim and winner of the 2019 Atlantic City Around the Island Swim. Charlotte was recently highlighted in the Adirondack Explorer magazine for her 32-mile swim in Lake George, completing it in just 17 hours and 58 minutes with no wetsuit and was unable to touch the bottom, a support boat, or use a flotation device. Charlotte is a four-time U.S. Masters Swimming Long Distance All-American and New Zealand Masters Age Group 1,500-meter record holder. She is the first New Zealander to swim an international ice swimming ice mile, the challenge that is comprised of swimming 1 mile in water at or below 41 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius. Charlotte recently won a gold medal in the 1 kilometer distance at the Ice Swimming World Championships in France. She is currently the executive director of the swimming hole in Stowe, Vermont, and a return guest on our podcast. I recently reached out to Charlotte because of her insane accomplishment of swimming 1 mile each hour for 24 hours at a charity event in Florida. My hopes are that this conversation inspires listeners to set audacious goals and chase wild adventures that bring you joy. You are listening to the Co-Movement Gym podcast, where we inspire people to move and live courageously. If you are enjoying this content, please support our sponsors in the description. I thank each and every one of you for being on this journey with us. Now, please enjoy the show. Folks, listen up. I want to take a brief moment and thank our podcast show sponsors, Lombardi Chiropractic, Native Path Supplements, and Redmond Life. Lombardi Chiropractic has been my personal chiropractor for 10 years and has kept my body strong and healthy. Native Path Supplements are used by numerous co-movement clients and our coaching team here at the facility. I highly recommend that you try their chocolate collagen peptides. I was made aware of Redmond Life by one of our trainers here at the facility. He recommended I try Relight Electrolyte Powder. This supplement has dramatically improved my afternoon energy levels and overall hydration. I'd like to thank these three companies for providing outstanding service and products that make our society healthier and more resilient. Mention the Co-Movement Gym podcast when you call Lombardi Chiropractic, and not only will they treat you like family, they will provide a nice, enticing discount to all listeners. And use code COMO15, that's C-O-M-O 15, at checkout when shopping at nativepath.com or redmond.life and receive 15% off all your orders. Your support to our show sponsors assists in us paying for expenses and continuing to provide content we hope you all enjoy. Okay, Charlotte, welcome to the Co-Movement Gym podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, and it's always good to see you.
Yeah, we had a chat, about a year ago, and I've been following you ever since. I'm getting into swimming more and more. You're obviously quite an accomplished swimmer, and there's a few recent challenges that you partook in that I want to talk about today. So let's dive right in. So your swim in Florida, you did a charity swim challenge, and this blew my mind in terms of what you accomplished. So can you tell me about that?
Yeah, this one was definitely a bit of a mind twist. It was a swim to save the alligator lighthouse in Isla Morada. And it involved swimming a mile an hour for 24 hours. So a 24-mile swim in a pool. And it really posed some interesting logistical planning and training for it to sustain yourself nutritionally,
Hmm.
hydrate enough, and then also having the mindset to get out of the pool and then get back in the pool every hour on the hour. I was really excited for this swim, despite thinking, "Oh boy, what have I done?" After I signed up for it, because I'd actually swum the Isla Morada Lighthouse, Alligator Lighthouse swim in 2018, and it's an 8 mile out and back swim to this really cool lighthouse. So I felt quite strongly that I wanted to go and support the swim.
Hmm. Yeah, that's did you find it harder to swim and then take a break and then swim again on and off versus one all-out effort? Because I know that you've swam over 24 miles at one time in the past. So was that a challenge?
Yeah, it really is a challenge. It's a challenge mentally and physically because when you're swimming, and you'll know this, Josh, from being in the water, you get into a rhythm,
Hmm.
and sometimes in a very, very long swim, it might be at mile 20 or 24 or whatever that is, all you're dreaming of is being able to finish up and stop. A lot of people, when they're asked, what do you think about when you're swimming? It's like being done. It's not always the case, but when you're doing a mile and getting out and stopping, that turns into, I was just jonesing for mile 24, that feeling of elation when you've sustained getting in and out of the water that long. But I think it was quite hard actually having your body set and rest for a
Hmm.
few minutes and then get back into the water and get going. And your core temperature cools too, so you have to get back, submerge yourself back in that water.
What was the water temperature of the pool you were in?
It was actually pretty warm. It was pretty toasty. It was I would have to say between 80 and 84.
Hmm.
And you'll know from me, Josh, and anyone who's listened to a few any interviews before, is I do quite a lot of cold water swimming. So I found that quite oppressive at times. However, when you get out with the cooler night air and maybe the 50s, low 60s, your body temperature cools. You get all cozied. I would wrap up in a jacket or a sleeping bag in between swims, and then you've got to kind of peel that stuff off and then slide yourself back into the water. So that first push off, I think, was always a wee bit hard.
What was the air temperature that you, because I'm surprised that you had to wrap up like that afterwards, but I guess it makes sense, right? Because the body temperature is,
Yeah.
98 degrees or so. And if you're in sustained long periods of time in 80-degree water, you would have that core temperature go down. But what was the air temp when you were
Well,
there?
the air temperature in the day would have been in the 70s. When the sun's out, that's all. And we're talking Florida. It's lovely. And then overnight, it did dip down, and it was really interesting. Everything had a really moist layer on it. So you would, we can talk about this in a little bit, how much rest time was between each mile, but you would get wet. Like your stuff would be drenched from that moisture. And, I think from memory, probably in the 60s, maybe somewhere upper 50s, 60s. And, as you said, if you come out of a warm, toasty pool,
Hmm.
and then your body's been moving and now your heart's not shunting all that blood around your body, you definitely did cool. And I think fatigue weighs into that as well. The more fatigued you are, generally, the harder it is to tolerate cool temperatures.
Hmm. Did you ever get to a point mentally or physically where you questioned either
I
finishing
did.
or like, this just isn't for me?
Well, not that this isn't for me. I did at one point, and it was about mile 2021, which was so uplifting. The sun was coming up because we started at 9 in the morning.
Hmm.
And it was really funny actually, because the first 6 miles, it's like, woohoo, this is just the best thing. And then, mile one, mile two, mile three, mile four. And it's like, wow, we're still going here. Uh, in, in the early morning, I started feeling a little bit nauseous, and I
Mm,
had 4 hours to go, and I was like, oh no, what if I frup? What if
hmm.
I actually physically vomit?
Sure.
It's one thing in the open water. If I'm ill in the open water, I just keep swimming. But in a pool, it's a pretty sacred place. You don't want to be losing your biscuits around everybody else and make them have to clear the pool. And I'm like, I'm sure if I'm feeling that, if I feel like I'm going to vomit, I'm going to have to get out. And I was really sad about that. So actually, for the last, I think mile 2021, I actually put a bucket, a a precautionary bucket at the end of the pool because I'm like, I know I can make it a 50 and hit the bucket and then keep swimming and be fine. So that was my only concern actually. And
That's
then
that's interesting. Yeah, that would have been pretty bad for everyone involved if you
right,
puked. I don't know what they would have done. Like you wouldn't
well you
cancel the event, right? I don't
you
know.
would need to clear the pool. I
Yeah.
mean, sanitation wise,
Mm.
those things need to be cleaned up. And I think it was really the heat was getting to me a little bit the actual temperature of the pool. Because what's interesting is, when you're swimming or in any activity, you're generating heat in your body.
Hmm.
And when I swam my first mile, um, I'm going to sort of regress a little bit. It's interesting. We can choose to get in and just do something, and whatever happens as far as how our performance goes. Well, I got in and I swam my first mile at what I thought was a really easy pace in a
Hmm.
long course 50-meter pool, which is a little bit slower than a 25-meter pool because you
Hmm.
have more speed when you have more walls. And so I swam at 25:30 and I'm like, oh, that's quite a good pace. I quite like that. And then mentally, I created a little challenge in my brain. I was like, oh, I wonder if I could do something close to that again. And then I went a 25:40, and the next mile I went a 25:25. And then I got it in my brain that the first half I was going to swim sub 26 miles.
Hmm.
And so I created my own additional challenge. I'm like, why you got to do that? And so essentially, as I got more fatigued, it kept my effort level up. And through the night, if I pushed hard, I got pretty hot in the water. So it was a real balance between body temperature. And then in swimming, if your effort level rises really high, often your body line in the water um, can deteriorate. So you're not as
Really?
efficient. So you can think, oh, I'm swimming really hard, but you're actually creating more resistance and you may be going the same speed or actually slower. So it was quite an interesting balance of holding good technique, finding the right effort level, and I'd made myself some time targets for 24 miles, which
Hmm.
which was fun, but I'm pleased I did it because it made it more enjoyable than just being like, oh, I'm just going to plot it. It's like, you know what, if I'm going to swim this, I'm going to swim it well.
Hmm. What percentage effort were those times at 25, 26 minutes for you?
Well, I would say the first one was about 70% effort, and there
Hmm.
were times where later, hours later, it was like a 85% effort. And that's pure fatigue and tired, and reminding myself that I'm not sleeping.
Yep.
So that's 24 hours with no sleep.
Hmm.
Um, so it was interesting. It could vary. I'm amazed at how strong our minds are
Hmm.
because I definitely had a dip down in the night.
Hmm.
It might have something to do with the little squirrel trying to nick off with my food. I came back and he was in the hood of my jacket. I'm like, what are you doing? So there were times when my mood might have been a wee bit lower that I had to push a wee bit harder in the water and give myself a bit of a kickstart. And then there
Mhm.
were times where I was kind of a bit goofy and, doing at one point doing a little Mick Jagger impression on the pool deck before I was going to get in. I like kind of getting psyched up before I get in. So yeah, it was quite interesting. It's definitely a mind swim.
Yeah. Do you think that swimming overnight had something to do with you getting nauseous towards morning? Because I'm assuming you consuming mainly liquids or were you consuming food too, like
No,
actual food?
I was consuming food as well,
Yeah.
and there was definitely, there was actually one thing that I think was a wee bit questionable that I did take in that didn't sit quite so well. And it's really interesting in any athletic endeavor. One of the big keys to success is planning your nutrition, because
Yeah.
if you don't have quality fuel in your tank, things are going to run rough.
Hmm.
And I had laid out a feeding plan, and essentially what I'd estimated I would want to take in for hydration and energy. And I was also considering warmth, on having something warmer in the night hours. And of course, with all good plans, you have to have some flexibility. And so I'd planned to have a couple of things that I heated up in a little kind of a recreational room, which was a few minutes walk to get there. And what I didn't factor in is that would eat up a lot of my rest time. So I'd
Hmm.
actually decided I wanted some Panera mac and cheese at 2 a.m. because I thought that would be a nice mental boost. Well, that was like, towing a dead weight in the pool. That was terrible. And definitely an hour later, I was like, I think we're going to cross that off the list. That wasn't good. Nothing against Panera at all, but just it didn't sit well with me. And then once you kind of get it in your head was, oh, I don't think that Panera likes my tummy right now. And then you can actually get your mind can actually negatively affect your body on having the stress about, I think that's going to make me feel sick. Am I feeling sick? I'm not sure. Maybe. Ugh. I
Hmm.
don't know. That paste doesn't feel so good. And, rather than being like, well, it's in there now, my body's strong, it's going to process it and convert it into fuel. It'll be just fine. And so what I actually did was I just stayed on liquids
Yep.
for 1 or 2 hours, and just understanding that my body could actually function. I got plenty of energy stores in there, and things did settle down.
So were you like when you say liquids, was it like protein shakes, electrolyte drinks? Like where'd you get your calories from? I'm really
So
curious about that.
I have a endurance fuel,
Hmm.
which is I think three parts carbohydrate and one a smaller part, a little bit of protein in there, because I find my body can only process so much protein over 24 hours, and then it can't take any more. And I would take electrolyte tablets, and then I chose to have quite salty little foods as well. So, like just little handfuls of perhaps salted almonds, maybe a little bit of dried fruit. I kind of liked the idea of just simple, basic, little bit of bagel and peanut butter. Unfortunately, the squirrel chewed through the bag with the bagel. He had a party. It was really, really fun. And I had some chicken soup. I had the mac and cheese, and then some goofy little kids' fruit snacks, which just were like kind of a novelty.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
Bananas, things like that. You never really know what you feel like till you get on.
sure. Yeah, I can only imagine because like obviously the hormones, like the stress hormone cortisol is being totally jacked up, right? Like because you're not sleeping and so cortisol stays high, meaning that your appetite isn't, suppressed the way that it should be. And right, there's just a lot going on. And
Yeah.
so there would be I went to one of our trainers here. He's an ultra runner. He did 100-mile run and it was like 26 hours, I think. And I
That's
went,
so impressive.
yeah, and I met him at mile 35 and then 44. And yeah, and then we talked obviously after, and it was like sort of what you were saying, like a lot of unknowns with food, what you're craving, reassessing how you're feeling, questioning certain things throughout, because there really is no perfect planning for something that long.
No, no, you're right. And as you fatigue, it's easy to get a little bit blasé. And that's why I actually did a schedule of what happened when I got out of the pool.
Hmm.
Um, I had a little routine down. So essentially, at the end of the lane, I put a chair, and there would be this is a bit of a crack up. So I wore 24 bathing suits, not all at
Oh,
once, by the way.
really?
Yes, yes, I did. So I had a chair with a new swim cap and a new bathing suit and towel at the end of my lane. So my 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 target was to be as efficient as possible as time, so I can maximize my rest. And there were certain priorities. Well, priority number one was to get out of the water and hit the restroom. So it's important to keep the kidneys, everything moving. Whether I felt like I needed to go to the bathroom or not, I was going.
Mhm.
Number two, I would rinse off. It's just to wash stuff, just wash, clean it. It's the most unusual thing. It's just much more comfortable than getting
Mhm.
out of a chlorinated pool and sitting. So I had a quick rinse off, suit on, and then I would go back to where my I had a little deck chair set up was. And then the next most important thing was nutrition and hydration. So I would have a certain amount of electrolyte water. And I knew it was because I'm in a freshwater pool, it's really important to keep that in balance because if that's
Mhm.
done, I'm done.
Yep.
And next up was fuel stop. And that would either be a liquid. I've used a lot of different endurance fuels, and these will be similar to what Ironman women use. Hammer Nutrition, you can, I tend to use Hammer at the moment, a Perpetuum. So I would have a small amount of that, and uh, on alternating feeds or alternating hours, I would have a little real food snack. And what I learned pretty quickly is, and we all know this from the dinner table, some of us take longer to learn than others,
Mm.
that um, taking over amounts of food doesn't feel comfortable. And so rather than suffer for the next hour, I learned pretty quickly that the smaller little bits, the better. So I would try and choose foods high in calories
Mhm.
to give me a good punch. I'd try and get things that weren't high in sugar,
Mhm.
and but there were you'd have little treat times where it might be whatever you were looking for, but just a small, rather than a fistful of nuts, I might have 12 nuts or 10 nuts, something like that. So that would all happen within about 6 to 7 minutes.
Mhm.
Um, I would have my alarm set on my watch for the 5 minutes before the top of the hour. So if I'm doing 25 to 7 minute miles, then I'm doing my shower, hitting the bathroom, getting my fuel, and that's going to leave me probably 15 minutes
Mhm.
before I've got to get in the water again, which is actually 10 minutes because 5 minutes before you get in the water, you're going to have your cap, your goggles on, and you have to get up, get over to the pool. And for me, I like to just move around a little bit, rotate in all three planes of motion, which essentially means that rather than staying forward back, I'd rotate my body to the side, laterally, keep things loose.
Mhm.
And then you're a minute before send off time, you're back in the water waiting to push off. So there's no time for lollygagging. That was a pretty tight schedule, and it was a matter of executing that perfectly 24 times.
Yeah. Did you have a team or anyone there to assist you with the transitions and all of that, or
I
no?
had two teammates there, well, one teammate and a friend, and they were both doing solos. So we were fending for ourselves.
Wow, that is wow, wow. Yeah, yeah, that's impressive. So yeah, there wasn't a margin for error
No,
because if you mess up, one or two of those, your digestion's off, you start cramping, you can bonk so fast in something like
exactly.
that.
And remember being the goal setter that I am, I was not going to start late because remember, I wanted to hit a specific time
Yeah, yeah.
for my mind, which was an internal thing. It didn't matter, but
Hmm.
it's like, oh, I'm not getting in 2 minutes late. That means my mile time's going to be 2 minutes slower, and I don't think so. So, and then along with that, you've also got towel situations.
Hmm.
When you're talking about damp, moist air at night, that towel's not drying when you're
Hmm.
swimming.
Hmm.
And of course, it sounds like, oh, it was hard, this and that, but we've got to remember it was a voluntary sign up and it was a great experience and it was an incredible experience in discipline and figuring out, okay, how can I make this happen and replicate it 24 times? And
Hmm.
you know what? It was uncomfortable. It was beautiful at night, and I kept dreaming of what that last mile would feel like, knowing I wasn't going to have to do that schedule after that, and that I'd never done 24 miles in a pool, and I was going to achieve that. And that day, enjoying that day after, of just satisfaction was amazing. And that last mile was everything that I dreamed it would be. It was an incredible feeling. And I think when we challenge ourselves, whether it's completing a 3 mile walk or whatever you put your mind to, and you
Mhm.
put significant effort in, that completion is priceless. I just don't think you can buy that feeling.
No, and yeah, I agree so much with that, Charlotte. Society, it seems like a lot of people want that feeling without the hard work, but you don't get that feeling without a ton of work, right? And you are absolutely right. The more work you put in leading up to it and during it, the better the feeling is afterwards. And I love those feelings.
Incredible. I mean, they're highlights. They're,
Hmm.
they say actually my son told me as of the at the wise age of 12, I had one not one, I've had many challenging swims, and he was like, it was we hand on my shoulder, he's like, Mum, the highest peaks are the hardest to reach, and when you get there, it's the most incredible view.
Hmm.
And I've never
Hmm.
forgotten that, because it's very, very true. And and opting out or not finishing doesn't mean you can't go and have a go at it again. You just have a few
Hmm.
more tools in your toolbox. But
Hmm.
this was a really neat experience, and I loved that it went to support the Alligator Lighthouse. I thought that was really, really great.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Alligator Lighthouse. Tell me about that. What is that? Tell me about the charity.
Well, I'll let you know what I know about it is, from what I understand, it's no longer a functioning lighthouse, and it was going to be taken down, and it's quite historic. And
Mhm.
it's a really interesting lighthouse. As I said to you, I kind of on a whim signed up for this swim in 2018, and it was 4 miles out. The water was quite toasty warm, and there was minefields of jellyfish, Josh. I was
Really? Really?
like,
Wow.
yes. It was, and there was quite a few hundred people doing the swim. It was well organized. I was really impressed with the swim, and I'd read that there are people who had some jellyfish stings, and I'm swimming through these things, and they were dense as far as how many there were, and they were in kind of certain areas. And I started hitting one of the two of them, and I was like, oh, well, that's going to leave a mark. And then hit another one, and it was sort of like ping, ping, ping. And it
Oh.
was eventually, they were getting me on the face, where my whole face was going boom, 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 boom. And I was swimming with my teeth clenched going. And I know from experience that the initial pain of a jellyfish sting does subside after about
Mhm.
10 to 15 minutes. And so I would be like, okay, if I can sustain this, it'll ease. And then I would hit another patch of them.
Oh.
The and so I made it out through beautiful clear water, made it out through these jellyfish, and then came to the realization I would have to swim back the same way through them. And so made this 4 miles out, and I didn't know what to expect on the Alligator Lighthouse. I thought maybe some big grandeur, because it sounds impressive, and it's actually just a quite a tall metal. It's not like traditional lighthouse looking, but it was really, really neat,
Hmm.
and I really enjoyed it. Turned round, went through the jellyfish again, and Cynthia Needham, who was kayaking me for the end, she's like, wow, I can't believe that you didn't hit any jellyfish out there, because there were grown men wailing, "Please, please get me out of this water," and other words that I won't use, which are not as polite. And she's like, "I just assumed you weren't getting stung," and I'm like, "Oh, I was getting stung, all right." Those things put the hurt on me, so it was quite funny. But again, that's the mental strength. So the Alligator Lighthouse is now a non-profit foundation, and they do fundraising to help maintain and prevent it from being, deteriorating from the
Hmm.
elements and the weather.
Hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, you want to talk about a perseverance? Holy cow! Like I've been stung by a jellyfish once, and yeah, it's painful, But how many times were you stung? Would you say,
Uh,
like, just a guess?
I'd say at least 150 times. I actually
Oh
took
my
I actually
gosh!
took photos. My daughter took photos after the swim, and it's just like the red it looks like I've got a massive rash all the way up in the front and the side, down my neck, my face. And I'm fortunately, you'll laugh when I say I don't react to that. What I mean about, some people do go into shock from that, but my body tolerates it quite well. So yeah, it was incredible. I couldn't believe it when I got out. And I had a bathing suit on, although granted a lot of people, some people do have wetsuits and speed suits, so they
Hmm.
may have had a wee bit more protection, but it got down my suits everywhere. I was covered in it.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely flowing top after that because it was painful.
Oh, yeah. Did you swim freestyle the whole time, I'm assuming, for
Yes,
the 1 mile
yeah,
challenge?
yeah, I did.
Hmm.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. And without any toys, I call them toys, fins or paddles or anything like that.
How many participants swam the whole thing by
There was
themselves?
there was four of us, and then
Oh, wow.
what was so great was the local community there is incredible. The event was headed up by Jennifer Dutton, and she is a swim coach there, and she had some of her swim participants who had signed up, and I was really impressed at some of these relay swimmers swimming further than they'd ever swum in their life in support of this cause, which I thought was really cool. And it's not all about achieving a solo thing. I think it's that
Hmm.
sense of community, and they were so welcoming because all three of us were from the East Coast. They sort of welcomed us down, and someone made us key lime pie cupcakes, which I am going to fess up. I did suck one of those down
Oh,
at
I
about
would have.
p.m. I'm talking about my lovely feed chart. Well, that went across, and I was with that pretty much. But I think I inhaled that. That was just really, really fun.
Hmm. That's amazing. Yeah, the sense of accomplishment is individual, right? So if
Yeah,
someone did a relay, or like you said, they walk 3 miles, or they swim 24 miles in 24 hours, it's 100% individual.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
think
wanted to now. Yeah, go ahead, Charlotte.
well, I think that I'm just thinking of me signing up for that. If something is on the table in front of you, or you search something out, and if your first thought is, "I wonder if I could do that," or "Could I
Hmm.
do that?" I think it's probably a good thing to throw your hat in for that.
Hmm.
Like if it's a little bit of a stretch and it means you've got to prepare, I think that's a really good match for someone to sign up for, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think committing to projects that make you fearful, and make you train and prep longer term, I think that's a huge that's a huge process to being like a mature athlete, right? Or business person or anything. But
Yes,
it's very hard to stay motivated long term chasing a goal. And that's really what separates, I think, people that accomplish big things and then never do, right?
I think so
But
too.
there's so many different mind games you have to play and motivational games. I just finished the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't. I'm gonna have to write that on my list.
Yeah, that Charlotte, that's you would resonate with that book a lot. I absolutely loved it. But no, I recommend to listeners, like you said, if something makes you nervous or slightly excited, you know, sign up for it, prep for it, and go for it. And then if you fail or it doesn't go as planned, like I can still guarantee you're going to learn more from
Yeah.
that experience than you will not doing anything. Would you agree?
I totally agree, and it also makes you really, I think it ups your time management game. I
Hmm.
know when I've got a swim on the table or a goal laid out, it really it really helps me get creative on fitting that training and that preparation work in because it's hard to find the time. And if you know something's ticking along towards your end goal, you're like, I got to fit this in. And I am much better focused at all my other tasks during the day.
Hmm.
From doing the activity and the swimming, and actually I'm much more effective with my time management. It makes such a big difference. I feel more
Hmm.
satisfied at the end of the day too.
Yep. Human beings need structure. And, you know, we thrive on structure and routine. A lot of people ask, or feel like they need more free time or this or that because they're overwhelmed, right, in different aspects of their life. But the reality is that if you actually like the structure, not only do you accomplish more, but you stay on task. And I'm the same way, Charlotte. Like when I have days, like work days, that I'm either caught up or I don't have as much going on. Those are some of the worst days. And you would think it
Yeah,
would be the opposite, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's look, whether it's swimming, whether it's a 100-mile run, whether it's with your professional life, it's about functioning at your upper level and being in your performance zone. And I think there are certain things that we do. One of them for sure is elevating our heart rate,
Hmm.
utilizing our breath. And, for me, that's just easy to pop in the water. And I'm there and it transfers everywhere else in my life.
Hmm.
And as I
Yeah.
said, for other people, that might be a walk or a game of racquetball. There's all different forms, but it's getting that performance zone focus where the other
Hmm.
noise is
Hmm.
is out of the way. And I think that, I love technology. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on, and it can also muddy my focus.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, before you know it, you've spent 2, 3, 4 hours on social media and you got nothing out of it.
Right, right.
So I want to talk about the ice swimming world championships in
Oh,
France.
yay, so fun. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We talked about this last time a little bit, not this particular event, but just ice swimming in general. And I'm still mind blown at how you do this. And I actually show clients your Instagram photos here, like when you're doing that, like there's snow like in the background and like
Yeah.
some ice, and like there you are like swimming like a dolphin. And so like you took gold in France in the 1K distance with ice swimming. And so I'm sure there's a lot of people that have never heard of this. This is still fairly new for me, but what is the water temperature in an event like that?
So in the World Championship, the water temperature was 37 Fahrenheit, and it needed to be 41 or below
Hmm.
Fahrenheit to be an official event. And when a common question is, you have actually, it's not a question, it's you have a wetsuit, right? And I'm like, well, yes, I have one at home in my closet, but
Oh.
so you're not permit you have to wear a standard bathing suit.
Hmm.
You're permitted one non-heat retaining swim cap, goggles, earplugs. You're not permitted to wear a watch, and there are in an ice swimming event. So this was in a man-made lake in the French Alps, and it was a a pool. It was really cool the way they did it, built out of kind of pontoon docks.
Hmm.
And it was a 10-lane pool, all equipped with traditional lane lines. It had walls on either end, and then it would have a wooden ladder in each lane for you to go down into the water. And what was interesting about the events is I'm I'd call myself a bit of a wild ice swimmer. I go out into the lake and slip on under the water and take in the sights. The eagles are flying overhead, the snow's flying, and it's just amazing. So it was quite interesting for me because I love open water swimming. I also really love pool swimming. So this was a neat combination for me to go and race in a traditional pool setting in ice water. So my point in telling you this is in a traditional pool, you do a dive start off a block, and most people would have seen in the Olympics, people power off the blocks. Well, you're not permitted to dive start in ice swimming. You
Mhm.
go down the stairs like walking the plank, and then you have to submerge your shoulders and have your lead arm extended under the water and one hand on the wall stairs before you start, and you're not permitted to do flip turns. So that's and it's what's interesting about it, it's full on racing. There's one thing swimming in cold water, you
Mhm.
add in the intensity of a top possible effort. And for anyone who's raced, whatever the distance, whether you are on land or in the water, 50 meters or 100 miles, it's hard work. Like you're taxing your system.
Yeah, unbelievably so. I'm just still blown away at this. So it's a race, 37 degrees Fahrenheit. You have to start in the water. So why didn't they allow dive starts? Why couldn't you dive in?
Um, I don't have the exact reason. I can tell you my interpretation would be that cold water shock's a real thing.
Hmm.
Like to hit the water with that sort of intensity and that sort of speed, I think it's a lot safer to have people to submerge and then push off.
Hmm.
Not to mention the potential slipping off a block.
Hmm. Hmm. So
Uh,
how long were you in the water with that? What was your time for the 1K?
the 16 minutes and 50 seconds for the kilometer
Okay,
in
so
37 degrees.
wow. So what would be your time in an 80-degree pool?
So I would go sub 14.
Okay, so it's a little bit slower for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a couple of components on that. Not doing a flip turn. So flip turns are fast.
Hmm.
Like
Yep.
when you're in a pool, your fastest time off the wall is leaving the wall. Not having a start's 5 seconds. And one of the big there's two other components. One is there's no visibility. So I was swimming in the finals at night.
Oh,
And there's no
wow.
light, there's no line, there's no lights on the bottom. You're not seeing where you're going. So that comes down to swimming straight, and then as certainly for me, as my core temperature drops, so does my power.
Hmm.
So those are the different time components. So
So
the
you were
shorter swims, I was probably not at my fastest pool times, but closer. So I did a 200 which was also gold, and a 500 meters as well.
Oh wow, I didn't know you did 3 races total.
Yeah, because why just do one?
Oh man. Oh boy. So
What's
what
250?
so you swam the 1K at night?
Yes, I did.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh. And there was no lines in the
no,
bottom of the pool.
no lines.
Oh wow. So how did you orient now is your form when you're swimming freestyle the same as the warm water, like your head is submerged and then you breathe to the side, or is your head up out of the water?
No, your head's submerged. Although I would pick my head up into the wall to,
Hmm.
to get a gauge of how far I was, and I would try and do that as little as possible. But I
Hmm.
did need to have a look when I was coming in, which does
Hmm.
deaccelerate you. And then, I found towards the end of the swim, I was breathing higher, which is not as efficient. And I think
Hmm.
it's almost a survival, non-conscious, unconscious survival skill of wanting to pull that head out of the water. So I would normally
Hmm.
probably try and breathe a little lower. But, what I would try and do is connect as many good form strokes as I could, given the environment, which was quite
Mhm.
challenging.
So, what was your breathing pattern? Was it like four strokes, one breath, or six? Like,
That's
what was
my
it?
my traditional one is four. I would breathe, at times every third, so I could get a little bit of a look around. So how I
Mhm.
navigated not seeing was I sort of studied the pool area, and there were certain things that I knew were a certain distance. So whatever the item is, it gave me a kind of an idea of where I was. And to answer your question, for the first swim, actually, the first swim, yeah, was the 1,000.
Mhm.
So each swimmer has to have a chaperone. I was swimming for New Zealand, and I had a teammate, David Coleman, just a great guy who's done a lot of ice miles, and I was his chaperone. So the pool area itself was a restricted area, but as a chaperone, I got down to go down there with him right into the lane, hold his gear, and be there when he went in and out. So I got to really examine the
Mhm.
pool and the walls, and I was kind of watching how people were turning, what they were doing with their hands. And so when it came to my turn, I also got to watch how they got in. So what I discovered that in the ruling or in watching is when it's time to start the event, you're walking onto the pool deck, get behind your lane, and once they say swimmers disrobe, you have 5 seconds to take your clothes off, get
Mhm.
down the ladder, submerge under the water, and then the starter goes.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, okay, let's not create a stressful situation in my mind on this. So I'd worked out how and what I was going to do it. Not unlike many of you listening, we have pre-race or pre-event plans on how things are going to go. And so down I go, down the stairs, and what I hadn't anticipated is there were only a couple of stairs. So at the bottom one, it was just boop. And I'm
Oh.
like, okay, now I'm in. And so actually, sorry, no, it was the 500 that was first, not the 1,000. So I've got my shoulders under in 37 degrees water. So if you can imagine, okay, you're going to get in an 80-degree pool, well, take 50 off that, and then you're waiting for the starter. So off it goes. And ideally, you want to head out at a consistent pace that you're going to sustain. Well, off I go, and my brain's like, race, 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 go. And it's also incredibly cold. So, to answer your question, I'm breathing every stroke because my heart's going boom, 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 my breathing. And so I get down, it's a 25-meter pool.
Mhm.
And you'll remember that I've talked about, I practiced touch turns in the pool at home. I had it all down, what I was going to go to do. My hand goes onto the wall, and then it just slips right off. And I'm like, oh, didn't see that coming. And I'm just pretty much hanging not on or off the wall. I'm like, okay, well, that tactic does not work. So for the next 25 meters, I'm like, I need to come up with a different way to navigate the wall. So, you know, the first the first couple of 100 meters was really about swimming as hard as I could, controlling my breathing, and I needed to get my breathing under control and remain calm. And then a big challenge for me was changing my mental shift because I went to a place of, oh no, here comes a wall. This is going to be
Mhm.
bad. And I had to change it to, oh, walls are great because you get a strong push off. And so that was kind of what it was like in there. And yeah, it was amazing actually. It was amazing to be there with other athletes from all around the world doing the same thing.
So what does the recovery look like? Because, and I talked with you on our first podcast, like, when I swim a mile in the Adirondacks and the water is 68 to 72, it takes me about 20 to 30 minutes to warm up after. And so, but you're talking 37 degrees for 16 minutes. What does that look like? Like, can you get out of the pool yourself? Like, yeah,
Yeah,
tell me about that.
yeah. So that's so held onto the ladder, hauled myself up. My teammate David had my jacket for me. I use these big, you might have seen them, big pink moon boots. They're really
Hmm.
easy to slip my feet into. So my feet went in there, and it was probably a minute or two walk up to a big, like a big insulated igloo.
Hmm.
And there they would have medics on hand to check you out and a warm tea. And my tactic is really just to get the wetsuit off as quickly as I can, and then layers of clothes. And David was great helping with socks and things like that. I was pretty good at navigating all the dressing. And then it's a matter of just waiting it out.
Hmm.
And there's and we might have talked about this last time. There's a component that comes along, depending on how cold it is and who you are, as after drop, which is essentially that cold
Hmm.
blood in your extremities starts rushing back to the center of your body, and it can be a very, very tough, painful feeling. And
Hmm.
I did feel the after drop after the kilometer, not after the 200 or 500, because they weren't quite as long.
Hmm.
But I was probably, I'd say 20 to 30 minutes after the 1,000. And, it was probably 10 to 15 minutes after the 500. I was in,
Hmm.
pretty good shape, very good shape after the shorter ones, and pretty good shape after the 1,000.
So the after drop, yeah, so I experience this obviously not at the level that you do, but that's like compulsive shaking, right? Like,
I
it-
don't, I'm a wee bit beyond, it's not that I would never shake, but my body doesn't shake as much anymore. It
okay.
rights itself pretty quickly. But
Uh-huh.
more, I think your body temperature plummets further with the after
Yep.
drop.
Yep.
And so not stable on the feet, good for someone to
Yep.
be sitting down, slowly
Hmm.
rewarm. That people might be lightheaded.
Yep.
There could be a possibility of yeah, there's a few possibilities where it's good to have someone with you, and not be alone during that, and very, very important, I think, to get checked out by a medic.
Yeah,
You
that's
know, I,
crazy because I'm swimming in water twice as warm, and I experience that at some level. I wouldn't say extreme, but I definitely my legs feel wobbly. I have like big, almost like tremor type shakes. I'm a little foggy headed sometimes. Like I just want to sort of go in like my cocoon for like 20 minutes.
yeah,
And then I come out of it pretty quick after once I start to get that temperature back up. But that's sort of a nasty little place to be.
yeah. It's if you're aware, I think it's just also what we've been talking about is just planning for it. It's very manageable if you're
Hmm.
aware of it, and it's
Hmm.
a matter of, okay, when you finish your swimming or you're soaking your cold, you're going to take care of yourself.
Yep.
So, ideally, you're going
Hmm.
to get out of the wind, get into a
Hmm.
sheltered spot, put some layers of clothes on, and you're going to slowly rewarm and
Hmm.
relax and
Hmm.
breathe.
Yeah.
And it's, a hat, gloves, some warm footwear, and
Hmm.
a warm drink, not a hot drink because it feels you'll probably burn yourself. And your body does get quicker over time at being able to recover. And
Hmm.
it's,
Hmm.
not quite so dramatic. And I think it's all relative to what someone's experience level is.
Hmm.
And someone can get out of 75-degree water and be in a cool wind and stand around in their bathing suit and notice they're starting to shiver. Their body's trying to rewarm. And so it's not exclusive to extreme cold temperature,
Hmm.
but it is something to be aware of,
Hmm.
certainly.
Was there any emergencies at the event? Did like any people get jacked up or like
Uh,
anything
not
crazy?
Not that I'm aware of. Like, we all had medical checks.
Hmm.
Uh, we all had full physicals with our own physicians in our own countries, and then we had a check-in with a medic before we were approved. We had to be pre-approved for the 1,000. So, these weren't people that had never done this stuff before.
Sure. Hmm.
Um, and they had some experience. So I wasn't aware of any emergencies. I think it was such a well run, well staffed, and monitored event.
Hmm.
And and for the shorter swims, you're not in there very long.
Hmm. Yeah, that would be yeah, I would definitely have to train for that, but the short one, that would be what I would gravitate to.
Yeah,
Be,
and
be,
that's how a lot of people get into it as well.
yeah.
But super
Um,
exciting. There's been a lot of spectators. They had a big MC. They had the town band there. It was just really well done and super exciting. And they
mhm.
introduced all the swimmers in the finals and their countries. It was terrific.
How many people total raced,
Just
would you say?
just under 500.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, so
Yeah,
decent number of people. Huh.
yeah,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm looking this season, when I start swimming to take your advice, what you said last year was to extend the season, like on both
yeah, yeah.
ends. So maybe the first, maybe 1 or 2 weeks earlier, and then try to swim 1 or 2 weeks later and
Yeah.
just sort of start to acclimate to that. Because I feel that I can. It's just you have to get your body used to that.
They definitely do. And what I really love about the cold water is, there doesn't have to be a manuscript on it.
Hmm.
You do what feels and works for you, whether it's
Hmm.
swimming or whether you want to soak, and it's just a little bit at a time, having someone
Hmm.
with you. And it's an incredible way to bring clarity on. I mean, the best way I can put it is when you get, and you'll know this because you've got in cooler water. When you get out of cooler water, well, it's a little uncomfortable getting in, and
Yep,
it's a little uncomfortable getting out, and then you wrap up, and it's an amazing feeling of
it is.
exhilaration. The cold water therapy is becoming more and more predominant to treat depression.
Hmm.
It's a natural stress reliever. And it releases endorphins.
Hmm.
It's an anti-inflammatory, and
Hmm.
it boosts the immune system, and it just builds a really good community. If you're out there one or two people, you get super close with people, and so really support each other. It's an amazing thing to add to your life, and it could be a minute. It doesn't need to
Hmm.
be. You don't need to be out there for 16 minutes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I do 1 minute cold showers every day, and that is challenging for me, not because of the cold. It's just more or less just being uncomfortable, right?
Yeah,
But I feel like I get a 10 or 20% uptick in happiness after
yeah,
that.
that's true.
And it feels like I drank 3 cups of coffee. And so you get all these free benefits, and it was only 60 seconds of cold.
Exactly. What a like talking about your time resource. What a bang for your buck.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I tell people start with 10 seconds and then go to 20, right? But just slowly, do more and more. And yeah, I do it almost every single day. I do 60 seconds and I absolutely love it.
It's such a good idea. It's really, and look, if you're listening and you're like, I don't know about that, well, you could start putting the shower heat down a little bit, and just a
Yep.
little bit at a time. And it comes back to what we were talking about, essentially dealing with a little bit of discomfort and adversity, and it really adds to your day.
Hmm.
And
So
you don't.
I have a few random questions
Yeah.
here, Charlotte. So we talked about the two events, but I'm curious on a few things. So how
Yes.
many yards on average do you swim in a week?
I swim on average 40, well, yards wise, so 40,000 meters, which is a little bit over, so more. So probably 20 to 21 miles a week. And in the summer, if I've got if I'll have an event coming up, it will probably go up to about 50 to 55,000.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So my 1 or 2 miles a week.
It depends
I,
what your main focus is. And then I will strength train 2 days a week.
yep.
And I'll always daily do a wee bit of stretching on my own, but I am working, I'm getting a little bit more yoga in, as far as actually attending yoga classes, which I find so much more beneficial than actually stretching on my own.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow. So Okay, I'm looking for if you have a beginner or moderate level swimmer, what are some common areas that they would generally need to improve upon? Just general areas that you see.
The biggest one is body position in the water.
Hmm.
And so that's essentially training your body to be on top of the water. If the
Hmm.
head is high, the hips sink. And what if
Hmm.
the sinking hips sink ships? So we want to try and get yourself on top of the water. Number two is many swimmers swim flat, and
Hmm.
freestyle is a long axis stroke where we rotate around the
Hmm.
long axis. And if you swim flat, you're wide like a barge, and if you're on your side or more on your side, you're fast like a speedboat. So those would be two. Number three would be it's a body stroke. And people often think that swimming is pulling with the arms and kicking with the
Hmm.
legs. Well, actually, it's trunk driven. So when I'm recovering my arm, my big strong muscles in my trunk and my upper back help me with that arm recovery, so I can place it
Hmm.
in front of my shoulder, stretch out nice and long. If I try and do a body arm driven stroke, I tend
Yep.
to snake across the midline, and I'm going to wiggle through the water. Those will be
That
the three big components.
That's so funny that you mentioned the lengthening out and it's more of like the torso rotation as one movement and not separate arm stroke with a kick, right? I've been swimming for a little while now, and I finally, this is the timing on this is funny. Last week I swam maybe 2,000 yards of drills,
That's great.
and
Yeah.
it finally clicked what you just said. Like you know, integrating it as one fluid motion, being long, timing that kick at the same time as the pull. Like I felt dramatically different, and I knocked off a minute on my 500-yard swim.
That is so much. That's so impressive. So
Yeah,
you
it
know what
was.
happened to
I
you? You got more slippery. So you got more distance with each stroke.
and I absolutely felt that. And so I did it in 8:26, and
It's
um
fast.
yeah, and I wasn't gassed aerobically, but physically, right? Like in
Yeah.
terms of shoulders and stuff, because I'm not too conditioned for this. But the drill that helped me so much, I did this before the 500, was I was swimming with a closed fist.
That's drill. I love that drill.
Oh my gosh, I saw this on YouTube,
Yeah.
and at first I was like, well, I don't know how hard that could possibly be. And then I was blown away at how difficult that was. And it forced me to kick harder but more efficiently, pull harder through the lats. Like it forced me to do a bunch of things I probably wasn't doing with an open hand. And yeah, and then the other drill that helped me learn to lengthen out was the hand matching. So I would pull
Yeah.
and I reach, and then I have to touch before I can pull again, right?
Yeah.
Um,
That's
it,
perfect.
yeah, and those two, it was like light bulb, boom.
Yeah, I love both of those. Those are really good drills, and the fist drill teaches you, because ideally we want to pull from our fingertip to our elbow. That's one blade. It's not just the hands. It forces you to anchor with that forearm. That's really really great. Oh, good stuff.
And then the third one I did was the zipper drill. So
Yeah,
I would pull, and then I would pretend as I'm doing the recovery where I'm zipping up my back with that elbow high, and then I would reach back out. So that was the third one that day that I did prior to swimming that 500, and it
that
knocked
is
the minute
perfect.
off.
Oh, I love those. Oh, you've done amazing.
Well, we're about an hour in. How can listeners learn more about you in the swimming hole in Stowe, Vermont, where you work? How can they find out more?
Well, there's a couple of different ways. They can we'll follow up the swimming hole on social media, and check out the swimming hole, www.theswimmingholestow.com. And open water wise, they can check out Swim Tech Camp, so www.swimtechcamp.com.
Hmm.
I'll be running some open water swim camps in Lake Memphremagog in Vermont this summer for people that are looking to become more efficient, get some more speed, and gain some confidence in the open water.
Hmm.
And they can follow me on Bryn Swim's Instagram.
Okay, I will link to all of that, Charlotte, in the show notes. I'm actually interested in that swim camp. I think
Oh,
that
it'll
could
be
be,
so fun.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
that
it'll
could
be
be pretty
great.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's such a good time, and it's, I think when we get to step away from our professional lives and actually, if we can dedicate some time to our swimming, it's quite incredible the progress we can make, whether it's 2 days or 6 days. It's huge.
Hmm. Hmm. Awesome. Well,
Good fun.
you are an inspiration to me. I'm sure you're going to inspire a lot of people listening to this. Thank you so much, Charlotte, for taking the
You're
time
welcome.
to join us, and I'm sure we will talk again in the near future.
Yeah, thank you so much for thinking of me, and yeah, it's always great to chat.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Bye.